Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're going to be talking about the 11.31 patch with respect to the Twine Endurance. If you don't know what the patch notes are, then go ahead to the Epic website and click there. It should tell you all the information about the changes that happened and pretty much an overview exactly what's going on with the Husk AI, right? And the most notable change is the smasher charging and the propane exploding at a certain health threshold, which is 33%. So with that knowledge in mind, I redesigned my entire twine base to have no damage so that all the husks are being recycled. Now, I am not going to give a very detailed overview. I'm not going to give a very detailed explanation on the builds themselves because this is only the first iteration of 3 meta changes, right? So there's going to be 2 other changes going to happen. We have no idea what they're going to be, right? It could be that propanes are going to explode no matter what, or smashers are going to be flying, flingers are going to be throwing smashers. Now it could be anything for all we know, right? So, but for those curious people that are interested to see what my base is like currently for this patch and how I complete the endurance mode in a relatively smooth manner, then I'll make this video just for those curious individuals, right? But I won't make a detailed guide. If you want to actually see exactly how to build for this tile by tile, then you're gonna have to figure a lot of that on your own, right? But I'm going to give a detailed overview exactly how this goes, and even some gameplay footage of each individual defense, right? So the first one would be the Homebase East, right? The Homebase East is relatively the same, right? The only difference is that there's no gas traps, right? So there's going to be a lot more recycling, and it should be relatively easy going, right? If you want to block the flingers from that side over here, then you can build more lobber shield. I decided not to, right? Now the Homebase North is another recycler. This is a different type of recycler, right? I'm just pathing them towards the middle over here, and from the middle I go all the way up here with some wall lights, wall launchers, and so there's essentially the recycling system going on here, right? So this is actually makes it a fairly decent recycler over here, pathing them from the middle over here, but they have to do a little U-turn. And on the ridge amplifiers, there's a lot of ridge builds already made, and this particular ridge build is less greedy than other builds I've seen on YouTube, right? But I'm personally very happy with it, and the reason being is because I find it very stable, very, very stable. There's no wall punching on this front side over here, and they all path over here, and then is a pretty decent recycling system where a trash house shouldn't make it over there. If there is, it'd probably just be like one husk, right? So I'm very happy with this recycling system over here, and you can go ahead with those kind of adjustments if you wish, right? But this is a very standard kind of ridge build where you're pathing towards the the west side. You're pathing towards the west side, and you just recycle them towards the west side over here. Okay, and then we go along with the Devil amplifier. So Devil North is probably the only build that I'm going to be using a quote-unquote stall build, and the stalling is actually within the tunnel itself, right? So I'm going to design a tunnel such that it's going to stall all the husks within this tunneling system, right? Instead of stalling it on the amplifier, which would be highly dangerous and not as reliable, especially if you're not using one of those constructors with increased health or the Frozen, right? The Ice King, right? So it's a little more reliable to do stalling on your tunnels that is right next to the spawn rather than on the amplifier, right? Which could be a greater risk. For the west side over here, there is a recycling system over here, right? And this recycling system is fairly decent overall. It doesn't work too well with the smashers unless I use the Yeoman or the Santa's Little Helper. I recommend using the Yeoman because the Santa's Little Helper for wave 6, there's a lot of propanes and it could blow up the propanes, right? But generally speaking, if you're lucky enough, the smashers should not spawn until much later on, right? Because generally speaking, smashers on these kind of waves like to spawn a lot later, and if you didn't kill anything or nothing despawned, then they shouldn't spawn, or only maybe one spawns, but at the very end. And towards the the little pit over here. The pit is a very similar build to what I had before. The only difference is that I'm going to be pathing them one tile more south, right? And this is kind of Allura and Sonic's kind of build, where they path them all the way up here, right? Instead of doing a dual path, I did a single path, right? And both situations are fine. I preferred this one over the other. And yeah, I just path them all the way towards the south side and stagger recycle the smashers down here, right? The ridge build over there, you can also do a stagger recycle over there, but there is not a guaranteed spawn with smashers on that amplifier. So I decided for the ridge not to focus on stagger recycles on the smashers. Okay. And for the bridge over here, the bridge west, right? So currently there's only going to be a bridge west, and essentially it's going to be the exact same build as last time, just no gas traps, right? Pretty much nothing really here has changed much. Maybe lobber shield has changed a little bit. There's no gas traps, but essentially it's going to be the exact same build. Okay. I'm just going to put these over here because I feel like these are really nice to have just for extra delay, and if they activate, it's trying to send me a signal, be like, oh, something made it over there. I should just take a look. But yeah, I'll just add that there for now. And let's go to the hill amplifier. So the hill amplifier for the west side is pretty much the exact same as last time, right? There's pretty much almost no difference, except maybe a little bit more open here because I can get away with it. And but yeah, it's pretty much the exact same build, and I'm just going to path them towards this north side over here, and this is going to be a stagger recycler, right? So this is a stagger recycler over here, there's stagger, and this is also a stagger recycler over on the bridge. So essentially all your builds, if you're going to be dealing with smashers, you need to do with stagger recyclers or stagger to the lava, right? And so this hill west is pretty good. So the hill south over here is another stagger recycler, right? It's going to be pathing them all towards the east side. So instead of pathing them just one tile east, I'm going to path them 2 tiles east, which actually requires a lot more block off than you may think. So this is the amount of block off I used, and it's actually quite a bit. I might get away with removing a couple of these over here, but overall it does require an intense amount of block off. Okay. But once you path the husk over here, then you can go ahead and stagger recycle them as usual. You can either stagger recycle the smashers down here, or you launch them into the lava amplifier down here, and then they can recycle by going the long way over here. Right, so it's up to you exactly how you want to do this, but this is the method I used, right? And speaking of the lava, this lava is probably the most complicated amplifier I built. This is a very complex build. I don't know how the hell I achieved it, but after a lot of trial and error, it's finally happened. So essentially, this is actually a dual tunneling system for the lava. I tried to path everything towards the geyser over here, which would end up instant killing everything into the lava. Unfortunately, I can't path everything to the geyser. So what I have to do instead is to make a dual tunnel so that I can path everything either to the amp or to the geyser. And what ends up happening is that 90% or even more, like maybe 95% of us path to the geyser anyway. It's just that little tiny bit of spawn that's right next to the right over here. I can't actually path them all over the geyser. It's just way too far. So I had to build a separate tunnel for them, right? Once I built a separate tunnel for them, and then the amp became relatively stable, right? I should do more testing on this amplifier, right? But from my testing, it's actually been pretty damn good, right? There's a little bit of what's it called? There's a little bit of uncertainty, right? Which I still need to experiment with the block off down here. Block offs on natural terrains can be really finicky when it comes to this to the AI. I'm not sure what's the reasoning behind it, but I have to do more testing on it to see which is the best appropriate type of block off to use. And this also corresponds to with the any type of terrain that is a hill, and you were trying to put a block off on it. There's been some really finicky things going on with it. So especially when it's right next to the spawn. But anyway, this is my lava amplifier, right? And this lava is also in this second tunnel. It's going to stagger recycle as well. It's not as strong as a stagger recycler as some others, but because the density is so low, it is not too much of an issue to deal with. And then we come to the Valley amplifier. So this Valley and Ridge I've never made a YouTube video for yet, but perhaps in the future I will. It depends on the changes that may happen in the future, right? So I don't know the changes that will happen in the future, but this is an overview exactly what I'm doing right now for the Valley. So the Valley amplifier is another recycler, but this is not a stagger recycler like the other amplifiers. I have not figured out a really good way of dealing with the smashers using a stagger recycler, because not only that this is a difficult amp to build for the smashers, but this also has the miss pods which break builds, right? So I had to deal with both of that situation. One is the smashers, this terrain, and two is the miss pods which breaks builds, right? I had to make it stable for miss pods, and that is the challenge, and this is the best I can do right now, and to rely on the player themselves to deal with the smashers, right? And I posted a YouTube video before on how I dealt with the UFO wave, which is pretty much spamming the Santa Little Helpers to knock them back, because the Santa Little Helper is the most reliable way to knock back smashers, right? And the second most would be the Yellman, of course, right? But I can't use the Yellman on the ground. If I can't use the Yellman on the ground level, because I have to deal with the takers then, right? So I had to build up there so that I don't have to deal with the takers. If it wasn't for the takers, then I could just stand in the ground level and just spam the Yellman, right? And be carefree about that. Okay. But yes, this is a recycler build over here for the Valley. Okay. Wait, what the hell? Is there a wall launcher here? Okay, that's kind of a random wall launcher to have. Anyway. Okay, so let's go to the beach amplifier. So the beach amplifier is a little bit expensive because there's 3 spawns to deal with, because the interconnected spawns with the beach north and the Wamp amplifier. And contrary to what many people believe, the beach north is actually not that bad to deal with if you know how to build for it, right? What's annoying is that you have to rebuild, right? So that's the annoying part, is not necessarily that it's a difficult spawn, it's the fact that you may require to rebuild certain things because of the interconnecting spawns. Okay, and I'll explain that shortly. So for the beach south, I've already made a video for this before, and essentially I still need the assassin tunnel to make this build stable because of the assassin husks. Particularly, it's actually the flingers, right? So the assassin husks overall haven't been too much of an issue, but it's the flingers. Now there is a certain thing that I have to do for all my builds, which I actually realized only recently. And I think not a lot of people actually notice this. But if you don't have a pathway for flingers to fling, right? If there's not an area for them to be able to fling, they will purposely break your walls so that they can fling, or they will phase through the walls so that they can fling, right? They really, really want to fling, right? So you got to make a pathway for them so that they can fling, right? And so, for example, the Valley over here, I purposely leave this here completely empty. I don't have walls over here. Not only that I can have better line of sight for the Santa's Little Helper, but it's because I can actually make it so that I can fool the flingers to think, hey, just come over here, you can fling. They're like, oh, okay. So yeah, that is exactly what it is, right? So I can fool the flingers to think that they can fling over here without breaking any builds, right? And it's the same kind of idea over here on the beach south over here. So the beach south over here, I just fool them and thinking, hey, just come over here and look, you can fling, right? Or they have to come over here and they can fling, right? So you're trying to fool them so that they can fling, so that they don't start phasing through your walls, right? And that's one of the really important things for many of my builds that make it really successful and stable, at least for the recent builds that I've done, not the ones that I've done for YouTube, because I didn't think about the reasoning why I needed these type of assassin tunnels. And then it's actually because mainly for the flingers, right? Assassin husks, yes, sometimes, but most of the time it's actually because of the flingers, because there's this minimum range of 5 tiles and there's a maximum range of like 8 and 9 tiles that they can fling from. If they can't, if they're like less than 5 tiles away, then they won't fling at all, and then you have to make a spot for them to try to fling, or else they would just try to break walls. Okay, and we come to the beach east, right? So the beach east overall is essentially going to be very similar to what I did last time. Very minimalistic, just like the south is very minimalistic. You can even see in the south side I removed some tiles, right? And the east east side is also very minimalistic. There's pretty much non-existent traps at the front side, and it's going to focus a lot of the builds on the recycling system rather than the spawns, right? So all the spawn traps are pretty much gone, so it's either going to be the assassin tunnels for the flingers, or it's going to focus on builds on the recycling system itself, right? So essentially, instead of pathing them straight across like I did before, I path them kind of similar to what Lore does and many other streamers or content creators, where they path them over here. And the reason being I did this is because I can take advantage of not only to edit the floors for smashers and possibly mini bosses if I choose not to deal with them, but it's mainly because so I can edit the floors for the smashers. Okay. And as well, it also becomes a better recycling system for launch them into the pit. And this works extremely well when it comes to the beach north. I'll explain the beach north as well. So the beach north over here, they spawn on this area, right? Sometimes they're going to break some builds on the Wamp amp, which you're going to have to rebuild, right? But it's usually very minimalistic, right? However, once they do spawn, I'm going to path them all the way on this side and just launch them towards the east side, right? I'm pretty much going to be reusing beach east for this amp, for the beach north, right? And in order to do that, you're going to need a lot of block off, right? So I use a ton of block off over here, and if the rare, well, I'm going to say rare, but uncommon spawn comes over here, then you're going to have to just rebuild them. And generally speaking, you don't have to even make them tier 3. Usually tier 1 or tier 2 would be good enough for the rebuild, right? But generally after every Wamp attack, I just try to look at it, and it's like, oh, okay, so there's some things I may need to rebuild. Just place tier 1, just replace it with tier 1 stuff and then go back to it later, right? If it comes around, then go ahead and upgrade it to tier 2. If it doesn't come around, then that's fine, right? Because it's just tier 1 stuff. But the emphasis on this annoying part is that you have to rebuild on the interconnecting spawns between the Wamp and the beach north. And the reason why you have to is because, well, the spawns kind of break some of the tunnels, which is unfortunate. So as a result, this is not AFKable anymore, unfortunately, right? But overall, even though it's not AFKable anymore, it is still can be really smooth, right? As long as you're not purposely being AFK, then it'll still be a relatively smooth run overall if you build it very well. Okay, and the last amplifier to talk about is the Wamp amp, which I have not made a video for. But I can give an overview exactly what I'm doing over here. Okay, so over here is the where I'm pathing them all the way straight up there, and I'm gonna do this little first cycler over here and just path them over here, right? And there's gonna be a ton of block off in order to achieve this, and there is this little annoyance about this particular pathing, right? So there's a rare spawn that breaks some of these I wouldn't say rare, but uncommon spawning that can break some of these. So sometimes I would just rebuild it because it makes it a lot stronger to have here. And it's not necessarily a spawn that breaks it, it's the tornadoes that break them. So often when I see a Wamp getting attacked, I just go to it and see if the tornadoes break anything, and then replace it if they do. And once I replace it, generally speaking, the spawns themselves don't break it. It's generally just the tornadoes that break it. And this is another little thing as well. So sometimes the smashers, if you don't have these walls over here, they will want to break the stair, which is very annoying. And in order to counteract, you just have to build walls all around this. If you build walls, then you're perfectly fine. Okay, and then this little corner floor piece over here, this is actually to shift the lava bomb. So you can shift it either from here, or you can shift it from here, or you can build a full floor over here. So any one of these would work. The reason why I chose over here is because over here I have a wall light, which would stagger recycle the smasher down here, which would then path them over here in between these, in between the wall and the quarter floor. Okay, and yeah, oh yeah, and as well, there is this over here. This is just strictly for the flingers, because I need to give them a place to fling, or otherwise they're going to break the walls down here, right? So this is just to help them with that. You know, if you don't have a place for them to fling, the only other way to get away with it, which I do in Beach North, is to block off literally every possible path and at least double layer it. right? For walls that are facing the amplifier, right? So notice how this wall over here is actually facing the amplifier, and these walls are facing the amplifier, so I need to at least double layer it, right? And then completely block it all off. So this entire area, which a flinger can try to beat through in order to fling, is completely blocked off because of this lobber shield over here, right? And on the east over here, this does not need to be double layered because these are actually not facing towards the amp. These are actually facing towards the east side. So because they're facing towards the east side, these do not need to be double layered at all, and you can get away with just one single layer block off over here. Okay. Hope you guys enjoyed the video and learned something about it, and go have fun building, right? If you're really super ultra curious about a certain amplifier, then you can go ahead and just tell me. All right, but yeah, have fun, guys.